Ivy Maria. Welcome to the Rosary Team Podcast.
It's wonderful to be here.
Today, we are going on what I feel is, well, it's almost like a rescue mission.
A rescue mission.
Yeah, we're trying to rescue the image of Jesus from the cartoons we've kind of turned him into.
Right.
We're looking past the usual cultural snapshots to rediscover the historic reality of the Lord and Savior.
It's such a necessary journey. We often settle for a simplified version, because it's easier to digest.
Right.
But the reality is always richer and, frankly, more demanding.
Definitely. And for this deep dive, we're unpacking a really fascinating historical analysis by Jorge Manuel Rodriguez on the secret life of Christ. And we're also going to draw on some beautiful devotional context from the Rosary Team's Sacred Art Collection. Because here's the problem, and I think we've all seen it.
Oh, absolutely.
Modern culture has done a number on the image of Jesus. You look around and you see this portrayal of a wandering hippie.
The flower child Jesus.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or, and I love this Spanish slang the source uses, a perro flauta.
Which means?
It's like a flute-playing dog, basically a beggar. It's this vibe of a destitute peasant with no skills, just wandering around aimlessly, crashing on couches.
That is such a common misconception, but it is just. It's historically inaccurate. If we look at the source material, the historical reality is so much more dignified.
Dignified, I like that word.
The church teaches Jesus was true man and true God. And when we examine his, what the source calls his human parameters, his lineage, his profession, his language, we see a person of significant social standing, immense skill, and real authority.
He was not a nobody.
He was not a nobody, not by a long shot.
Okay, I love that phrase, human parameters, really
Yeah.
grounds the discussion. So
Yeah.
let's start with the first one, family. Lineage. In our world, honestly, who really cares who your great-grandfather was?
Right.
But back then, I'm guessing that was a very different story.
It was everything. It was fundamental. In antiquity, your lineage defined you. It was your identity card. And Jesus is known, of course, as the son of David.
Which we hear all the time in Mass.
Exactly. And I think because we hear it so often, it just sounds like a religious title, like Good Shepherd.
Sure.
But it connects him directly to King David, the founder of the political organization of Israel.
So when people back then heard Son of David, they weren't thinking nice religious teacher, they were thinking
Heir to the throne. Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The prophecies were very clear that the Messiah would come from this specific eternal lineage.
Which brings us to Saint Joseph.
It does.
And this is where I always get a little stuck. We know Joseph isn't the biological father, right? That's the virgin birth. So does his lineage actually count?
It absolutely does. In Jewish law and culture of that time, legal paternity was just as valid, in some cases more so than biological paternity.
Really?
Oh, yes. It conferred full status, inheritance rights, social standing. So socially and legally, Jesus is the son of Joseph, and Joseph is of the house of David. That connection is solid.
Well, okay, the sources bring up something that skeptics love to point out. The genealogy conflict.
Right. Matthew versus Luke.
Yeah, you look at the Gospels, and they give Joseph different fathers. One says Jacob, the other says Eli. Is this just like a typo that nobody fixed?
It's highly unlikely to be a typo. It's much more likely a reflection of a specific Jewish law called the Levirate law from Deuteronomy.
The Levirate law. Okay, break that down for me.
It's actually a kind of social security. It says that if a man died childless, his brother was obligated to marry the widow.
To provide a son for the dead brother.
Exactly, to carry on his name. So the child born would biologically belong to the second brother, but legally, he would be the son of the deceased first brother.
Oh, I see. So it preserves the family line.
Precisely. So it's very probable that Joseph had two fathers in the record, one biological and one legal because of this law. One genealogy traces the biological line, the other, the legal one. It explains the discrepancy perfectly.
That makes so much sense. So if we sum up the family side of things, what's the takeaway?
The conclusion is that Jesus was not a miserable poor man or some marginalized figure. He came from a noble line. Humble, yes, they weren't living in a palace, but noble. He had real status.
So not a nobody. He was royalty, just living among the people.
Exactly.
But even royalty has to eat. And that brings us to his day job. If you ask anyone what Jesus did for a living, they'll say carpenter. It's probably the most famous job title in history. But our source says we've got that wrong.
We've likely mistranslated it, or at least narrowed it down way too much. The Greek word used in the Gospels is tekton.
Tekton, okay.
Now, the confusion comes from later Latin translations. The word carpetarius, where we get carpenter, meant a maker of carts or chariots. But tekton comes from a root that means to fabricate or to construct.
So not just making tables or fixing a wobbly chair.
Not at all. We have to look at the geography. In Israel at that time, wood was actually pretty scarce. It was a luxury. Most building was done with stone.
So Jesus and Joseph were, what, stonemasons?
They were tektones, constructors, builders. They would have worked with stone, wood, heavy structural elements.
That completely changes the physical image I have of him. I mean, stone is heavy.
Absolutely. We're talking heavy lifting, precision chiseling, a kind of engineering. And socially, this distinction is huge.
How so?
A simple laborer, an ergates, was someone who waited in the plaza to be hired for the day. If they weren't hired, they didn't eat. But a tekton was an autonomous professional.
So like a contractor today, or a small business owner.
Very much so. They were part of a guild or a clan. They were free men who took contracts. And if we look at the Roman architect Vitruvius, writing just before Jesus' time,
Okay.
he said builders were expected to be educated. They needed to know geometry, drawing, history, even astronomy to orient buildings correctly.
Wait, hold on. Astronomy, geometry, that blows the illiterate peasant theory completely out of the water. You can't build a structure that stands if you don't know math.
Precisely. In the East, construction was often seen as this sacred, almost religious trade. You were participating in creation.
Okay, so they're skilled pros. But where were they working? Because Nazareth, I've always heard it was a tiny, dusty village. Not exactly a lot of construction projects going on there.
Nazareth was small, yes. A bedroom community, basically. But this is the detail that historians find so fascinating. Just 3 kilometers away.
Which is what, a 40-minute walk?
About that, yeah. Just a short walk away was the major city of Sepphoris.
Sepphoris. I don't think I've ever heard that name in Sunday school.
It's often overlooked, but it's crucial. During Jesus' youth and young adulthood, Herod Antipas was rebuilding Sepphoris into a major Roman-style city.
Like a construction boom.
A massive one. We're talking paved streets, villas with mosaics, public buildings, theaters. It is highly, highly probable that Joseph and Jesus walked that short distance every morning to work on these projects.
I just want to pause on that image for a second. It's so different. Imagine Jesus leaving quiet Nazareth, walking those 3 kilometers, and entering a bustling Roman-style construction site.
Yes. Think of the noise, the clash of stone, shouting in Greek and Latin, dust everywhere, scaffolding. He wasn't isolated in a quiet woodshop. He was in the thick of a cosmopolitan building project.
Interacting with Romans, Greeks, merchants.
It places him right in the center of economic and cultural activity. He understood the real world because he was literally building it.
You know, visualizing this, the sweat, the stone dust, the noise of Sepphoris, it really shifts how you relate to him. It's hard to visualize because we're so used to these soft, sanitized images. But I was looking at this icon on the Rosary Team site.
The St. Joseph the Worker with the child Jesus one?
Yes, that's the one. It's available at rosaryteam.com, and it captures the grit of it. St. Joseph is in his workshop, tenderly guiding the child Jesus, but it looks like work.
It's a profound piece.
It really is. It captures the dignity of daily labor we're talking about. It's printed on this FSC-certified birchwood, so it has this rustic, solid feel to it, like something a Tekton would appreciate.
And there's deep theology there. St. John Paul II, as quoted on the site, called Joseph a just man and a tireless worker. He said the workshop was where Jesus grew in wisdom.
It's a great reminder that our own offices, our construction sites, our kitchens, they can be sacred workshops too. So seriously, you should visit rosaryteam.com and take a look. It's a beautiful way to sanctify your home.
A wonderful resource.
Okay, so we've covered the job. Now let's get into the other topic that can cause a fight at dinner parties, the family. Specifically, the brothers of Jesus. You hear it all the time. Well, the Bible mentions brothers, so Mary wasn't a perpetual virgin. It seems like a slam dunk argument if you just read the English.
Yeah.
But what did the linguistics say?
This is a classic linguistic trap. We have to remember the layers of language. Jesus spoke Aramaic day-to-day, Hebrew in the synagogue, and probably enough Greek for commerce, maybe from his days in Sepphoris.
But probably not Latin.
Probably not. Latin was the language of the occupiers. Now, here's the key. The Gospels are in Greek, but they record conversations that happened in Aramaic.
In Aramaic.
Aramaic does not have a specific word for cousin.
Really? So how would you introduce your cousin?
You'd call him your brother. The word for brother covers cousins, nephews, close kin. It's a broad tribal term.
So when they translated that into Greek, which does have a word for cousin,
they often carried over the Semitic idiom. The source uses a great analogy from Spanish. In Valencia, there's a phrase, "mi sabe mal."
mi sabe más.
Literally, it translates to, "it tastes bad to me."
Which makes no sense.
Right. But what it means is, I feel bad, or I'm sorry. The nuance gets lost in a literal translation. It's the same with brothers. They meant kin.
But the source brings up an argument he calls checkmate. And honestly, when I read it, I had to stop and think, it's from the cross.
Yes, this is the definitive proof. If Jesus had biological brothers, younger sons of Mary, he would never, under Jewish law and custom, have entrusted his mother to the Apostle John.
Because the next brother in line would have the duty to care for her.
Precisely. It would have been a grave insult to his brothers. Giving her to a non-relative implies they were incompetent or dead. The fact he gives her to John confirms he was the only son.
That connects the cultural context to the scripture perfectly. It clears it all up.
It does.
So let's pivot back to the builder idea. Because once you know Jesus was a Tekton, you start hearing the Gospels differently. Do we see evidence of his day job in his preaching?
Oh, everywhere. Once you put on the builder's lens, you can't unsee it. For a start, Jesus is called rabbi or master about 45 times.
And we think religious master, like a guru.
Yeah, which he was, of course. But in the construction guilds, the magister, the master, was the highest level of skill. The Greek term architekton, where we get architect, literally means chief constructor.
A master of works.
Exactly. When people called him master, they might have also been recognizing his professional status.
Does he use any specific industry jargon in the parables?
Absolutely. Think of the parable of the wise man building on rock and the foolish man on sand. He specifies the wise man dug deep.
Dug deep.
A farmer might talk about the surface. Only a builder knows the technical importance of digging foundations deep into the bedrock. But my favorite is the parable of the tower.
Remind me of that one.
Jesus asks, "Who among you, wanting to build a tower, does not sit down first and calculate the costs?"
Sounds like common sense.
It is, but it mirrors almost exactly the Roman rules written by Vitruvius about budgeting for public works.
Wait, what?
In Roman law, if an architect went over budget, there were severe penalties. Jesus is basically quoting the project management handbook of his day to explain spiritual commitment.
Whoa. So when Jesus talked about counting the cost, he was literally quoting a professional code.
That's what it looks like. He's using the professional code of his trade budgeting estimation to explain discipleship.
And what about that line? If these keep silent, the stones will cry out.
That's the voice of someone who knows his materials. The builder knows the voice of the stone, its stress points, how it fits. He had an intimate relationship with the material world.
Incredible. He was speaking from decades of lived experience. Now, speaking of buildings, the big one, the temple.
The temple in Jerusalem, a massive construction project, 46 years in the making.
And the cleansing of the temple, where he flips the tables. We often see that as Jesus just losing his temper.
But it wasn't anarchy, it was authority. He was enforcing the rules of the temple. The area they were in, the court of the Gentiles, was for prayer, not commerce. The priests were corruptly allowing it.
So he was acting as the true owner, cleaning house.
He was defending his father's house, restoring order to the sacred construction.
This leads to his entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. We see the donkey and we think, oh, how humble. But our expert says not so fast.
It's a misunderstanding to see the donkey, the Polino, only as a symbol of poverty. In the Old Testament, a warrior king rides a horse.
But a king of peace.
A king of peace rides a donkey, like Solomon. It was an explicit political claim. And notice the detail. The donkey had never been mounted.
Why is that important?
In the ancient world, an animal that had never been worked was reserved for sacred or royal use. You don't put a king on a used work animal.
And the people throwing their cloaks on the ground.
That is a specific right of enthronement for a Davidic king. We miss these hues, but the crowd knew exactly what he was doing.
So he was openly claiming the throne.
Absolutely. He was entering his capital as the Messiah king. No wonder the authorities were terrified.
So we have the king and the builder. And in his final act, he starts a new construction project, the church.
This is where the metaphor becomes reality. Think of that moment with Peter. You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church.
I will build. Using the verb of the Tekton.
Yes. This is an architectural rite. He is laying the cornerstone, the foundation stone of a new edifice. He is the architecton.
And it's interesting, the term for pope is pontiff, or pontifex.
Which means builder of bridges. It's all construction terminology.
And there's that beautiful connection when Paul is on the road to Damascus. Jesus asks him, why do you persecute me?
That's the key moment. Paul wasn't persecuting Jesus personally. He was persecuting Christians. But Jesus identifies the church, the building, as his own body.
He builds the house, and he is the house.
Precisely.
So let's pull this all together. We started with this image of a hippie Jesus, but the sources have given us a totally different person.
We see a descendant of kings, a son of David, with true social standing.
We see a Tekton, a master builder, skilled in stone and wood, educated, who worked on major Roman urban projects.
We see a man who cherished his family and temple, who spoke the language of the people but carried the authority of a king.
And finally, the architect who laid the foundation of a church that's still standing 2,000 years later. It really changes how you pray, doesn't it?
It makes him incredibly accessible, not because he's low, but because he sanctified the very work we do every day. And here's a thought to leave you with. If Jesus is the master of works, the Tekton, then he isn't finished building. We often think of the church as a finished product we just have to maintain, but a master builder is always working. He is still building his church, stone by living stone, today.
That gives me chills. He's still on the job site.
He is.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us. I feel like I've met a whole new person today. Before you go, I want to remind you one more time to visit rosaryteam.com. If this conversation sparked something in you, go find that St. Joseph the Worker icon. They have other beautiful art that celebrates the Holy Family as they truly were, with dignity and grace.
Highly recommended.
Thank you for listening to the Rosary Team Podcast.
God bless.